many of our people who are thinking more deeply and more broadly, looking at it as it actually is, and are beginning to see it more in the international context and the relation that it has with the African struggle, a human rights struggle, or the struggle for human rights. And as such, we can then take it into the United Nations
and bring about the freedom of these people by any means necessary.
Hi everyone, welcome to We Charge Colonialism. We are an organization of Pan-Africanists who are trying to raise awareness of the fact that Africans in the United States are being colonized by the United States government. So if you want to learn more about our organization, you can go to wechargecolonialism.org. I want to talk about today the issue of why is it so difficult for a lot of our people to accept leadership without trying to throw out fallacious assumptions, without concluding that every single black person trying to do good in the community is trying to do bad. What is our tendency that we really don't want anyone to step into a leadership position? And I've heard people many times say that we don't need leaders. No other race has their leaders. No other race has people who are known as the leaders of the white race, or the leaders of the Asian race, or leaders of the Chinese, the leaders of the Latinos. And that analysis has some merit, but you have to think more in depth about why you don't have certain people that you associate as being the leaders of different groups. One thing that you should be asking is there ever a revolution that occurs without any leadership? And the answer is no. Now, when I say without any leadership, I mean without any leadership. No one says, okay, I'm going to be the one who's going to start the initiative. I'm going to be the one who's the brains behind the idea. I'm going to be the one who does the pamphlets and gets the information out to the people. People who step into a leadership position. You're not going to have any type of revolution without those types of people. And you look at black people as opposed to other races in this country, what you realize is that we're not in a position where we can't have leaders, meaning we are the most oppressed people in this country, blacks and Native Americans. We are the ones who are struggling the most. We are the ones who are at the bottom of every single totem pole. You can think of economics, you can think of education, you could think of ownership. We're literally at the bottom. And the reason we're at the bottom is because there has essentially been a war that has been waged against our people. Now, the thing that we have to know is that if there's a war that has been waged, that your response to the government is not going to be the same response as everyone else, meaning you can't afford to go along and just get a job and be happy and as a group, you know, be able to have the benefits that is promised to other people who do those same activities. No, you're going to have to deal with things like being targeted by the police, or being targeted by the mass incarceration system, or the many other systems that exist in the United States. So when you understand that fact, that we're in a different position, we are in a position of being in we are essentially under the defense. And when you're under the defense, you really can't get out of that position without having people get into the position of leadership. And it doesn't mean that there's one person that we're all going to follow. It means that there's numerous people inside of numerous roles with numerous gifts who are going to be the ones to essentially be the vanguards. You can't have a revolution without people having ideas for which the revolution will revolve around. You're not going to have any change inside of a political system without having people who are going to be the change agents. And any type of attempt to obtain real revolution, we're not just talking about reform, we're talking about real revolution. Any attempt to try to obtain that without any type of leadership is always going to end up in chaos. So I say that to say, when you think about the Cuban Revolution, when you think about the Haitian Revolution, the revolutions that more are aligned with us in our political position as being oppressed people, as being colonized people, as being people who are facing the worst imperialists in the world, when you think about those things, we really can't afford to not have leaders. Now, this past weekend we did a live stream. WCC did our first live stream. The subject of the live stream, if any of you did not catch it, I suggest that you go back. It was a really good discussion. But why do black organizations struggle? One of the topics that we talked about was why there's a tendency to label people agents whenever we view them as being maybe in cahoots with the government or something, or we're just suspicious. We're like naturally suspicious. And I want to talk about that a little bit more, just because of the recent things that have transpired with the not effing around coalition, and their leader, Grandmaster Jay, I believe is his name, has been accused by some in the conscious community, a lot of people who are, from what I've observed, are followers of Tariq Nasheed, who essentially accused him of being an agent. Now, let's talk about this whole agent concept. We know that Black people were victims and are victims of government operations, counterintelligence operations. This is a fact, right? And the ways that we know that is because long after the fact, a lot of government documents have been leaked. Some of them have been released. Not all of them have been released. We really won't know the extent to what happened with Cointelpro, because a lot of the things were redacted, but a lot of things have been released to where we know, for example, that Marcus Garvey, that's the furthest back that I can remember off the top of my head, we know that he was being very much followed by the FBI under J. Edgar Hoover. We know the same thing about Dr. King. We know the same thing about Malcolm X. We know the same thing about Kwame Ture or Stokely Carmichael. We know the same thing about the Black Panthers. We know that all of these people were being heavily surveillanced by the government. Not only were they being surveillanced, but they were also being targeted with different types of attacks from the government. For example, it could be something as simple as someone doing something to make phone calls to someone and try to confuse them, and you know that these phone calls are out of the ordinary. And it can be something as extreme as trying to formulate a plot that makes it look like you, who has done nothing illegal, that makes it look like you were about to engage in a bombing of a building or something extreme like that. That's how extreme the operations could be. And of course, we know the real extreme could be having the FBI or the police or having different people work to essentially enforce an assassination against people, as we know happened with Fred Hampton and a number of other people in the Black Liberation Movement. Now, the thing about this whole thing about Cointelpro is that we have to be very clear in understanding why Cointelpro was essentially enforced. The fear was, it wasn't every Black organization that received the full wrath of Cointelpro. Yes, there was always people who were reporting back to the government. For example, in the NAACP, there are people reporting back, and you wouldn't look at them as being the most radical organization, but there's always been people who have been reporting back to the government what happens. But the people who were targeted for complete annihilation, those are the ones that pose a threat to the government. The threat to the government could be anything from people who are talking about separate from the government. For example, Marcus Garvey, he never talked about Black people arming themselves. He never talked about us having, militias or anything like that. He was simply saying that we should build up our industries, that we should have ownership, that we need to make plans to have our own things, ultimately, well, first with America, but ultimately with the plan of us having our own ownership in Africa. And he actually had no problem allowing white people to have this country. You guys can have this. What we want is back in Africa. Now, you would think that, hey, he's saying you guys can keep whatever you want. I'm not coming for what's yours. You would think that that proposition would have support, right? These are people who actually stole everything that they have. The land that they sit on is stolen from the Native Americans. The country that they enjoy was built with slave labor. So if someone comes up saying, hey, we're not coming for what you already took, fine, you take it, we're going to build our own, that should be something that would be welcome. But no, actually, to a lot of people who were in the country, that was a threat, which tells you that independence to the government is automatically a threat. Saying that you're going to build up Africa, that's a threat. So we know that that's automatically viewed as a threat. We know with the Nation of Islam, when they started having similar rhetoric, that was viewed as a threat. We know that whenever Black people talk about self-defense, instead of talking about taking it, and essentially when we were not willing to lay down and not willing to say that you're going to do whatever you want and it's fine, that's viewed as a threat. And we also know that the other thing that has been viewed as a threat is when we actually organize among ourselves to do what the government will not do for us. That's been viewed as a threat. Remember what Robert F. Williams did. He said, all right, y'all are not going to protect us from the KKK and whatnot, so we're going to arm ourselves and we're going to organize ourselves. Think about what the Deacons of Defense did. They did the same thing. They were viewed as a threat. They were not regarded as people who were not a threat to the government. They were not regarded as people who did not need mass infiltration. In fact, Robert F. Williams had to leave the United States because the FBI literally attempted to put fallacious charges on him that were not true. So when you look at what happens when people do things that are viewed as threats to the government, they're dealt with very different than people who aren't threats to the government. And there are a lot of people who like to chatter and say things about other people being agents and whatnot, but you have to ask, what are you doing that's a threat to the government? Because I can see what this person's doing that's a threat to the government. I can see what this person's doing that's a threat to white supremacy. And when we talk about white supremacy, we're not just talking about some abstract concept. We're talking about white power. I see how this person is challenging white power, but how are you challenging white power for you to be able to feel that you can call someone else an agent whenever they are doing something that actually is a threat to white power? Now, let me say, as far as Grandmaster Jay, I don't know enough information about him to make an assessment on whether or not he is anything. I'm not in that position. And if we're all honest, none of us are. The fact that you can find some old videos of someone saying something old is not proof for you to say that you know what this person's motivations are, you know what this person's actions are. Unless you're in the organization or someone close to the organization who can say something substantive, such as he's misappropriated funds, or he's done things, he's been using the organization for criminal activity, or if you can say something like he's doing something to try to get money for his house in Malibu, like something like that. Unless you're someone close to the organization or someone in the organization, you're really not in the position to say anything. We have to stop thinking that social media makes us these experts as far as who was legit and who was not legit. Social media is fake. A lot of people talk big on social media. A lot of people can act raw on social media. A lot of people can say, oh, forget white supremacy. Oh, I'm against that stuff. Oh, you ain't real. I'm real. A lot of people can talk like that on social media, but a lot of those people are not in organizations. A lot of those people do not go out and do things in their community. A lot of those people are very silent whenever they do have the chance to challenge white supremacy. So don't think that you can pull up some videos on someone and that gives you the legitimacy to stand in the seat of judgment, because let's be honest, if I pulled up videos of any of us, we might find some suspect videos. I've said on my channel numerous times, when I was younger, probably I'm pushing 29 right now, so probably I would say 12-13 years ago, I was very conservative as a teenager. I really did believe that a lot of things such as the Republican Party were the best option. I had a very different mindset back then. I was someone who really believed, I would say, in the teachings of evangelical Europeanized Christianity. That was me when I was younger. Now, what has changed is I have learned, I have grown, and I have experienced life. And we have to keep in mind that a lot of the people who you praise, at some point, they were not the person that you glorify today. Malcolm X even has a quote where he literally says, do not judge anyone based on what they believe, because at some point you did not believe what you believe. If you are sitting here and you're watching this and you're a Pan-Africanist, at some point in your life you were not a Pan-Africanist. At some point in your life you were not a black nationalist. At some point in your life, you didn't know what white supremacy was. At some point in your life, you probably misspoke on racism. At some point in your life, you were not conscious. So to try to judge someone and think that you have the answers, and understand, I'm not saying whether or not he's this or that. I have no information. I've never spoken to the man. I literally just watched a few videos from him. And I've seen a lot of the chatter, and I've done some really quick looks into the things that people have been saying. So I'm not in a position to say if he is something or he is not, but I am in the position to say that we have to stop these mentalities, because if anything, if the first thing that you know how to say, the second that you see something that doesn't feel right, just because, oh, I don't like what they said a long time ago, or I don't like what I've heard about them, I've heard a lot of things, I don't have any evidence, but I think he's this, I think he's that. If your first thing to do is to say that person's an agent, you are being an agent in yourself. And that's what we have to understand. That whole calling people an agent thing is corny. Like, let me say, it's corny. If you don't have the ability to actually say what an agent is and how this person meets that criteria, then you're being corny to me. Because we have to understand, when we're saying someone's an agent, we are saying that the FBI or the CIA hired this person. They hired this person to disrupt a black movement. Let's just think about what NFAC has done so far that we know of, because again, I don't know a lot about this organization. So far what we know that they have done is they have armed black people, they have organized black people. We know that during, I believe it was the Atlanta there was some protest in Atlanta about the brother who was killed recently there by the police. I forget his name, sorry. But they went down there and they were talking to the community. I've seen him talk, Grandmaster Jay talking on Roland Martin's show, saying that they were speaking to people in the community about not just protecting and having a militia for the police, but also having a militia to basically police our own neighborhoods. So they try to organize police presence for black people, by black people, owned by black people in black neighborhoods. So the things that we're discussing, what in this makes you think that they would want the government would want someone to be doing these things? Think logically. Think logically. Why would the government that has never wanted you to be armed, that has always done everything it could to discourage you from being armed, that has always done everything that they could to discourage you from taking matters into your own hands, why would they find someone and say, hey, I need you to start an organization, and you're going to start this organization in the black community, and you're going to get people armed, and you're going to get people to do things like challenge the KKK, and you're going to teach them to start policing your own communities? Yeah, you're going to do this for government. You're going to do this for white supremacy. That doesn't make sense. And that's the thing. It irritates me. Y'all don't even make sense sometimes. I'm sorry, I usually don't get worked up, but y'all don't even make sense. Why would you be calling someone an agent when they're doing the exact thing that people have been taken out for, that Malcolm was taken out for, that Marcus Garvey was taken out for, that the Black Panthers were taken out for, that the Black Liberation Army was taken out for? You're not making logical sense. And that really shows that just the social media activism is so fake. Y'all are not concerned about the community. Y'all are concerned about just supporting the people who you support. You're more concerned with being basically a fan, with being someone who's a stan. You're just gonna go with whatever someone tells you instead of thinking for yourself. And the thing that irritates me the most is when the people who say the most, when you ask them what organization are you in, they say none. You ask them what organizing are you doing in your community? None. What have you done? Oh, nothing. When's the last meeting you went to actually try to change things? Psst, I don't go to meetings. Okay, what do you do? I don't do nothing. I don't vote. I don't do this. And understand me, I don't vote, for in these types of elections at all. But I'm using that as an example to say that they have nothing that they do, nothing that they contribute. They don't even feel the need to just go out and be vocal in their small sphere of influence that they do have. All that they want to do is sit back on the sidelines and like posts and do things based off of emotion, because that's what it is. It's emotion. You're not really thinking about revolution. You're not thinking about how do we get out of the conditions that we're in. Think about it. We're in the worst conditions possible. And instead of try to think of a way to get out of it, you try to challenge a movement that's trying to find a way to build something to get out of it. And it's just nothing but, it's this weird like social media rivalry that we've started engaging in, that we started supporting, instead of trying to realize that, listen, we are the #1 target in this country. of every single type of systemic white supremacy, every single type. Anyone who says anything that will get us out of this condition, that person, I want that person to continue doing what they're doing. That person, I don't have all the answers, but hey, you're doing something, even if you are someone that has dual purposes, or you're trying to do something, you have a hidden agenda is what I'm trying to say. Even if you have a hidden agenda, and understand, a lot of our leaders have hidden agendas. That's the other thing. A lot of people have other motives. A lot of people, a lot of your favorites have other motives. Most of the people that we know because they have other motives. So even if you have other motives, I don't even care. Is what you're doing going to do good or bad? Simple as that. Don't tell me that a lot of the people who have been activists in our community have not had motives such as having some type of substance. Don't think that they have not been trying to establish themselves politically or just even trying to make a name for themselves. A lot of them have. And guess what? Me personally, I don't care what your motive is. Is what you're doing going to do anything to get us out of this horrible condition that we are in? Sometimes I think our people, we don't appreciate the extreme conditions that are happening right now. Every single place where you go in the world with African people, we are being oppressed. We are being killed. We are being exploited to the utmost degree. I don't think we're getting it. I think it's been happening for so long that we're numb and we're just okay with it. And instead of trying to get out of it, we just surrender and we say, you know what, we're going to just cry and moan whenever things happen, but we're not going to try to do anything to actually change the situation. We're going to call people white supremacists. We're going to call people agents. We're going to do these things that are quick and easy because we don't want to engage in struggle. Struggle isn't just calling someone an agent. Struggle is getting out there and actually organizing, getting out there and doing something in your community, getting out there on the streets. Do something. It's not that hard. It's not that hard to say, you know what, I'm going to take out 10 minutes of my day every day for Black liberation. Just 10 minutes. Think about the fact that someone did something in order for you to live in the conditions that you are living in right now. If you are inside of a community where maybe you're the only Black family in the community and you don't have to worry about someone coming by and burning a cross on your lawn, or someone coming by and saying you can't live here because we have a covenant that says only people who are this color can live here. You don't have to worry about someone coming by and throwing rocks in your window. Someone died to give you that privilege. If you are at a university that is a non-historically black college, someone died so that you can go to that university. If you're at a job that is outside of the Black community, someone died so that you can do that. Literally all the things. If you're driving on the road and you say, all right, I'm going to stop at Holiday Inn and go take a nap. Someone died for you to even be able to go and take a nap at that hotel. So for someone to have done that for you, and you really feel like you can't take 10 minutes out your day, anytime, not to go on social media and gossip, not to go on social media and say, oh yeah, I feel this way, I'm on this person's team, I'm on that person's team. No, take out 10 minutes of your day and do something to change the conditions that we're in. If you can't do that, you're selfish. And you are someone, honestly, who's a traitor to what that person did for you, who died for your freedom and for your liberty. So that's all I want to say on this. It's just a general comment that, you know, I always get distressed when I see people calling each other agents. And it's kind of sad that we gotten into this point where we do these small passive-aggressive moves as a show of that we're pro-Black. But to me, if you're not doing something to change the conditions that we're in, then your pro-Blackness is very, very, very shallow. So that's me saying that this is a challenge to our people. Just do more research before you make these suggestions, before you jump on board, and don't feel comfortable saying something if you don't know. A lot of us, we feel comfortable saying something because, oh, so-and-so said so. So-and-so put it on their Facebook profile, so therefore I believe it. This person said it and he's always right. She said it and she's always right. Therefore, I will justify what she said or what he said. That's a very sad condition to be in. That's a very, very sad condition to be in as a people, where instead of actually knowing and doing something to actually know something, you would go with what someone else says above your common sense. The fact is, we're tearing down so many of our leaders, and I'm really concerned about the fact that I don't know anyone who has at this point risen to some type of prominence without being demonized. So those are my thoughts. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. Again, we are We Charge Colonialism, and if you're interested in learning more about our organization or joining, you can go to wechargecolonialism.org. We will see you guys in the next video. The Justice Bank. So what is the Justice Bank? I've talked before about the fact that we were trying to do a bail project, but we ended up deciding to do a mutual aid fund. The Justice Bank initiative will essentially take members, and if you would pay a very low monthly membership fee. We're going to keep it low on purpose because we are servicing a people who are the most disenfranchised in this country, the most under attack, and it's not reasonable to expect that there's that someone could pay $30 a month, $50 a month, whenever you are of that group. Now, when you become a member, we're going to have a trial period, maybe say after 3 or 6 months, whatever, you are eligible to petition us for help with your expenses. Now, what type of people who are targeted from the prison industrial complex, what type of people would be eligible? Well, because we're doing a mutual aid society, that would be democratic. What we mean is that if you are a member of the Justice Bank, you would have a say in what types of, let's say, charges or offenses that you want to be covered under the Justice Bank. The idea is that all of us are putting our money in collectively because we are a target of the prison industrial complex. Every single day that we walk out, you as a black person, you are seen as a criminal in this country, and that is a fact. And we want to offer a type of protection for our people, and almost like an insurance policy, honestly, that if you do have some type of run-in with the law, if you do have a charge, a criminal charge, that you can count on a mutual aid society to help you and assist you with those types of charges.
Nowhere in the world incarcerates as much as we do. We've seen extremely high rates of exposure to the criminal justice system for African American men with very low levels of schooling. So if we think about black men who were born in the late 1970s and who are growing up through the American prison boom of the 1980s and the 1990s, the chances that they're going to serve time in state or federal prison if they dropped out of high school is about 70%. So going to prison for that group of black men with very low levels of schooling, that's become a normal life event. And that's really only happened in the last 10 years. We're at this point now where there's about 1.2 million African American children with a parent who's incarcerated. That's about 1 in 9.